bit earlier this year than years past because there's so much early voting.
There really is a lot of
And
early
as
voting.
soon as I found out there would be 3 people, I said, well, I have to try to get this scheduled because I don't even think she's got absentee ballots yet. She's taking applications, but I don't think the ballots are.
And the little booth isn't out there yet.
Yeah.
I
so
was
they-
there yesterday or something, the day before. I didn't see it there.
well, So that means she probably doesn't have ballots yet.
So you're thinking about an hour, right? However it happens.
Yeah, it shouldn't be longer than an hour.
No.
Oh, 6 o'clock. I can tell you, Mark. And that's where the camera is, so.
Good evening. My name is Penny Thompson, your Caribou City Manager, and I want to welcome you to the 2024 Caribou City Council Candidate Forum. Our special guests tonight are the 3 candidates, Jody Smith, Ben Tucker, and Paul Watson. By charter, the Caribou City Council is elected by qualified voters of the City of Caribou at large for a term of 3 years each. Only qualified voters of the city shall be eligible to hold the office of councilperson. The regular election of municipal officers is held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November in each year, and there are 2 city councilors to be elected in 2024. The terms of municipal officials shall begin the first Monday of January. All powers of the city are vested in the city council except as otherwise provided by law or the city's charter. Caribou is very fortunate that these 3 citizens have stepped up to seek this public office. We thank you for your willingness to step outside your comfort zones to put your names on the ballot to serve the citizens of Caribou. It's obvious you care deeply about our community's future. Tonight's event is moderated by Jason Parent. Mr. Parent is a Caribou resident, a Aroostook County native, and the Executive Director, CEO of ACAP, the Aroostook County Action Program, a program that provides services and resources that help individuals and families achieve greater economic independence. Thank you, Mr. Parent, for moderating the Caribou City Council Candidate Forum. And with that, I will pass the forum over to you, Mr. Parent.
Thank you very much, City Manager Thompson. It is a pleasure to be here with you and with the candidates this evening, and welcome to all of you out there watching on the live stream. Before I introduce the candidates, I'm going to just share with you the rules for tonight's exchange, specifically as it relates to what order the candidates will be presenting, as well as the timing that they will be following as they answer their questions and then as we follow in rebuttal. Momentarily after I introduce the candidates, each will be allowed to read a prepared statement not to exceed 90 seconds. If candidates are unable to be here, and all three are, so that's not a factor this evening, there would have otherwise been the opportunity for a proxy candidate to do an opening statement. But candidates are seated in alphabetical order, and the opening statements will begin accordingly with Mr. Smith and will conclude with Mr. Watson. Now, following the opening statements, we will begin the question process, again proceeding in alphabetical order, this time with Mr. Tucker responding first to question number 1, followed by Mr. Watson, and ending with Mr. Smith. Now, at the conclusion of all of the responses, if anyone has a follow-up comment, there will be the option for a short period for any rebuttal. Now, Mr. Watson will be the first to respond to question number 2, followed by Mr. Smith, and so on. So candidates, any questions on that order or any timing questions? I will explain to you in just a moment how the timing cues will be delivered. Now, as a reminder, questions were solicited from the public to represent topics related to local issues. Some questions were recycled from previous candidates' forums as they are still relevant today. Each candidate will be allowed 90 seconds, as I mentioned, to answer each question. Time will begin after I release the question or after it's read, and then the candidate will have that time to thoughtfully and promptly finish the question. Now, at the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will be also allotted a 90-second closing statement, and that will go in the order starting with Mr. Watson and ending with Mr. Tucker. Now, to help you along with your cues this evening, City Manager Thompson will be presenting a green card to indicate that you have 60 seconds left. In other words, 30 seconds of your 90 seconds has expired to help you manage your time. She will then put up a yellow card indicating that you have 30 seconds left. So at the point that a minute of your time has expired, letting you know you have 30 seconds left, she will raise the yellow card. When she raises the red of the 3 cards, that will indicate your time has expired. I will then at that point let you finish your sentence, but will ask you to please wrap up so that we can ensure all candidates have equal time. So again, at 60, indicating 60 seconds remaining, the green card, 30 seconds remaining, the yellow card, and when the red card is raised, that is when your time has expired. Now it is my honor to introduce to you the 3 candidates running for the 2 City Council seats this year. First is Jody Smith. Jody was first elected to the Caribou City Council in 2015, served as Deputy Mayor in 2019, and served as Mayor from 2021 to 2023. During his years on the City Council, he was a member of the Investment, Highway Protection, Municipal Buildings, and other committees. Reflecting on these years of service, Mr. Smith is pleased to have been on the City Council during the pandemic, a time that the City Council kept all municipal services operating while also lowering the mill rate. While mayor, he navigated the process of hiring a new city manager and followed that to a successful conclusion. Jody is a lifelong resident of Caribou, a 1993 Honor Park graduate of Caribou High School, and has family ties in Caribou going back several generations. He's a past master of Masonic Lodge 170 in Caribou. Mr. Smith works locally in the agricultural industry. Jody Smith. Our second candidate this evening is Ben Tucker. Ben is a native Mainer, originally born in Portland. Now, after leaving Maine, he has lived in Indianapolis, Indiana, Phoenix, Arizona, and Santa Rosa, California, where he met his wife of 10 years, Haley, before returning to Maine and settling in Caribou in late 2021. Mr. Tucker has a professional background in the telecom industry, playing a critical role in designing fiber optic network builds and obtaining permits throughout various states. In this role, he has additionally performed cost analyses, post-construction inspections, and utility pole resiliency evaluations. Mr. Tucker believes that a thriving city requires a commerce-first approach with a low barrier of entry for businesses to thrive and create localized economic benefits such as jobs and increased wages. He additionally believes that as civil servants, it is important for the council to maintain a positive relationship with the people of Caribou based on transparency and respect in order to maintain accountability and to build trust in council decisions. Candidate Ben Tucker. And lastly, candidate Paul Watson. Paul Watson was born and raised in Caribou, Maine, married to Janine Watson. He is retired from military service after 24 years in the Air Force. He obtained his degree in nursing and as an RN worked throughout the Aroostook County community and retired out as a director of nursing. He is a life member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, currently holding positions as the Aroostook County District 1 Commander, Caribou Post 9389 Senior Vice Commander, and Aroostook County District 1 Commander. Surgeon, I should say. He is also a member of the Disabled American Veterans and a Master Mason. Currently, Mr. Watson voluntarily represents veterans and their families at both the state and national levels, attaining much-needed benefits and services, allowing them to live more comfortable and rewarding lives, thus fulfilling the motto, caring for veterans and their families yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Also, as part of the Veterans Services, he works with both veterans and the auxiliary in supporting community projects for the betterment of all county residents. As a retired businessman who has owned and successfully operated small businesses in this state as well as other states, working with city councils, chambers of commerce, he certainly understands the need that we must create a real business-friendly environment. Mr. Watson believes we need to treat all people with respect regardless of opinions in order to attain a well-rounded, vibrant community that is successful well into the future. With that, thank you again and welcome candidates. We will begin now with our first round, which is the opening statements, and as I indicated earlier, we will begin alphabetically with you, Mr. Smith. So Jody Smith, you have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Jody Smith. I've opted to run for re-election for the Caribou City Council beginning in 2025. As mentioned earlier, I'm a lifelong resident of Caribou, and I've worked here my whole life. I've had the opportunity to serve as mayor from 2021 to 2023, and as deputy mayor in 2019, serving as a councilor prior. I'm pleased to be here this evening in this public forum to answer the questions and concerns presented by Caribou citizens. Caribou is a great city and a lot to offer, and it is a pleasure to serve in this capacity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. We will now move on to you, Mr. Tucker, for your opening statements.
Is it on? There we go. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody during my time collecting signatures that I got to speak to, who got to share their opinion of the city and what kind of change they'd like to see. It is an honor to be up here, to know that those people that I spoke with liked what I had to say and my thoughts to put me up here. I agree with Mr. Smith that Caribou does have a lot to offer. I really feel like it's a city that's teeming with opportunity, and I would love to show you how I intend to push us towards that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidate Ben Tucker. And lastly, with opening statements, candidate Paul Watson.
Well, I agree with both of you that Caribou has a lot of opportunities. However, like many of the folks out there, I'm also frustrated with the City Council, the current tax strategy, policies, and procedures, and well, let's face it, just the current direction of the current community. I feel we need to go in a different direction. I feel that if you want to continue on this path as citizens, and you're going to, and just go ahead and continue to vote the way we have been in the past, and you're going to get the same response. If not, like most of us, we'd like to see a change in direction. So that's where I stand, that's where I come from. Hopefully we can wrap it all up together and move forward as one united group. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Watson. We will begin now with our first question, and it first goes to you, Mr. Tucker, and that is, what is your leadership style, and what do you hope to accomplish as a City Council member?
My leadership style is one that's more of a direct approach and solution-oriented. During my time in the broadband industry, I've delivered a lot of bad news to a lot of clients, and I like to do it in a way that is meaningful, so that when that feedback is provided, when I'm offering my opinion on things, it can be trusted that it is what I truly believe is the best thing to do for whichever situation is at hand, even if it's something that's not convenient for myself or for others to hear. That being said, as a council member, I believe that my role would be less of a leadership-oriented role and more of a civil servant role that is listening and answering to the constituency and moving forward to push the constituency's goals.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Watson, you get 90 seconds at that question to tell us about your leadership style and what you hope to accomplish as a city council member.
Basically, the book talks about various different styles. This is the way I was trained. The military trained me. You had autocratic, democratic, transformative, laissez-faire, transsectional, bureaucratic, and subservient. Having said that, I pretty much use them all. I don't think there's one situation where you can give a flat answer. I think it's more important to understand the how and why something happened. That's the only way we can fix it. I tend to think that if you can find a solution, it's usually based on the people who are experiencing the problem. They're the ones that can do the best to get you forward. I think as a city council member, that needs to be the primary goal. I mean, whether you get elected by those people that are bringing you problems or by people who didn't vote for you. The fact that there's going to be somebody here, that there's going to be someone who can listen and is willing to roll up their sleeves and work, I think that's the goal. That's the direction we need to go.
All right, thank you very much, Paul Watson. Jody Smith, you get the last shot at this question. Again, what is your leadership style and what do you hope to accomplish as a city council member?
I'd like to think that my leadership style is sensible, even-keeled. When you're in the role of city council, you represent the whole community, not just a small portion. You have to be able to listen to your constituents, make decisions based on the information given to you. You need to be able to listen to the other councilors and get along. At one point, on a term as mayor, the paper called me the tiebreaker. One term, there was a very split council, and I had to make a lot of decisions. And I believe I did that in the best interest of the citizens. The worst thing you can do is be on here with personal agenda. And everybody has a reason to be on the council, but we want to move forward with that. So the things to accomplish are ongoing things, obviously. The police department is right at the top of the list. We've got the fire department project, and a lot of these are ongoing projects that we need to really wrap up in the next session.
All right, before I move on, I'm just going to pause for a moment and make sure that none of you have anything else you'd like to add to that question. All right, so then I will move on to question number 2. We're going to begin with you, Paul Watson, on this one. And what is your definition of economic development, and what policies can the Caribou City Council adopt to increase economic development efforts?
Well, to me, the definition of economic development is any business that comes into the community that produces revenue that we can all utilize for the purposes of moving forward that's not tax driven. Unfortunately, we haven't had that as of late. A perfect example is the last commercial building permit Caribou issued that I'm aware of was 2019 for the Dunkin' Donuts. Yet last year Presque issued 17 commercial building permits. I think there needs to be some focus there. The other thing I think is that although I enjoy them, and I truly, I can't say this enough, I truly wish the mom and pops businesses here in the community do well. However, we need something a little bit larger. We need a bigger footprint, something that attracts people, attracts revenue, and of course, in turn, everybody can benefit from. With more money in the community, the more chances business have to aspire and grow.
All right, Mr. Smith, you get a crack at this question. Again, your definition of economic development and what policies the Caribou City Council can adopt to increase economic development efforts.
obviously, my definition of economic development is bringing in new business, anything that gains us revenue, whether it be through building a building with new taxation, property taxes, or, personal property tax, or if it is an expansion of a business that hires more employees that spend their money in town, or it could be something as simple as a business coming up with a unique product that they offer that draws people in from a region to spend their money here. It could be something like that, an existing business. We have done some things. I attended a DOT meeting discussing curb cuts on the controlled access highway. Hopefully there'll be some process on that. We can open that area up for economic development. Just point out too that half of our city manager's salary is based on economic development funds. If we can, in the process of hiring an assistant city manager, hopefully some more of that time can be spent, not saying that's not being done now, on economic development. And there's ways we are limited on what we have for tools. I'll save that one for the next question. And I just want to point out a few new businesses here in town on the list recently. So, we have Ruska's, we have Skin down at the old Pizza Hut. That's a unique place. We have the new appliance place that just opened. The graphic place down here is going to open. I understand Reno's, or the former Reno's, is going to be opened as a restaurant. And we have the Maine Bean and Tea Company. So these are some of the good things. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Smith, we're going to move on to you, Ben Tucker, with your 90 seconds to talk about your definition of economic development and what policies the council can adopt to increase economic development efforts.
A firm belief that I've always held is that competition drives prosperity. To me, economic development means more than just opening up new businesses, but also encouraging individuals to settle and live permanently in Caribou. Without that, with property taxes too high and keeping people from looking at Caribou as a desirable place to live, you end up with a situation where people live outside of Caribou and work inside of Caribou. It's very important that we grow our population, growing our workforce by incentivizing not just new businesses, but also new constructions within Caribou to bring down the cost of housing so that we can increase the tax base while lowering tax burden on individuals.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Tucker. We're going to move on now, unless anybody else has anything else to add on this, because we're going to continue our conversations around economic development, this time specifically with your thoughts on how to increase business retention. Many of you spoke about business expansion, new businesses, but business retention and expansion in this question right here in Caribou. And Jody Smith, we begin this one with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Business retention is probably number one. I mean, you have to retain what you have. You got to keep your base, because if you bring in a new business, lose an existing one, you haven't really gained anything. The city council does some ways to do that to help business retention. Obviously, lower taxes. Sometimes it can be as simple as changing an ordinance or something to that effect to make it easier for them to operate or do what they need to do. And that could go to, some of that could be with the planning board as well. We have some tools. We have the facade improvement program, excellent program we can offer. We can offer things like tax increment financing, credit enhancements. I mentioned the ordinances and expansion, and we also have some tools. We have the Caribou Development Block Grant, which we work with NMDC, and that is, the city staff works with the business to get that. We also have some other tools too. We have the Caribou Economic Growth Council that has some lending opportunities. So we need to support our local businesses and keep that base built so it doesn't topple over.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. We're going to move on to you, Ben Tucker, with your thoughts on how to increase business retention and expansion here in Caribou.
I think responsible deregulation is the key to attracting new businesses and maintaining the current businesses that we have to allow them to expand. Something in the lines of offering tax incentives for businesses to expand, businesses to open up here. I believe that we need to look closely at any existing ordinances that we have that might be an obstacle to this so that we can create a more favorable environment for the businesses of Caribou to flourish.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Watson, you get the last shot at this question in terms of how to increase business retention and expansion in Caribou.
Ooh, here we go, huh? I agree with your statement. I think if you have regulations that, by God, you have to get a second lawyer to read what the first lawyer wrote, I think that's a little too complex for business to deal with. I also think that some sort of tax incentive, usually about 10%, and we trade that off with allowing people to, existing businesses, if they're willing to take on another employee, keep them for a year, I can see giving them 10% tax discount on that, because the benefits for them is that they have the reduced tax flow, but they also generate or get to keep more revenue so that they in turn can go ahead and they can better their products. We in turn get another employee, another person who comes into our community, spends money, and locally everybody takes a share of that for their businesses also. I think that's wonderful. I think one of the sad parts is we have to get off the fantasy and get a little bit more realistic. I think our problem is that we have this cute tiny hamlet plan in our mind, and that's a vision, although ideal, is not working for us. You have to be able to look out and say, look, some of these businesses that are here need to grow in such a way. And I would refer to F.W. Webb. They left the community because of the inability to grow and push forward, as one of the examples they put forward.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Anyone else want last thoughts on this? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the fourth question then. We're going to begin this one with you, Ben Tucker, and it's what the city is currently working with the Maine Department of Transportation on a village partnership initiative. What are your thoughts about how the downtown area can be revitalized and better connected to other areas of the community? 90 seconds on this.
One concern that I have about this initiative is what downtown revitalization would look like and would exactly all of it would entail. That verbiage is really broad. If referring to the roads specifically, I think they serve our needs as a community right now with a population of a little over 7,000. But if we can be prudent with the taxpayer funds and the grants available to us, I can see that the goal of community and connectedness being a great thing, and possibly improvements could be made with more green areas or more communal areas for community gathering spaces. But beyond that, I don't think that we should be changing the roads to support a population that we don't have, because that would look like spending millions of dollars that we can't afford.
Thank you, Ben Tucker. Paul Watson, your thoughts on the work that the city is currently doing with the Maine DOT on the Village Partnership Initiative and how the downtown area can be revitalized and better connected to other areas of the community?
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's a perfect example of what's wrong with our community. The whole purpose of putting in that traffic circle, as well as building that modern mall and function and sticking it into the old school buildings, was simply, in the short version of it, without going into a lot of detail, was get around putting up a traffic light. If you're old enough to remember, they used to come down off that hill off Main Street, lock up the brakes, pray to God they weren't going into the little brook behind the Collins Mill. So one of the options, because of the traffic flow at that time, was to go ahead and do something different, and that's how we ended up with this. And then we got that, I don't want to say architectural nightmare, but now we have something that we can't blend. I think what we need to do is we need to look at focus as building a bridge. In other words, trying to mold the two styles together. I think if we do that, then naturally we'll fix the road situation coming along with it. Does that mean we tear everything down? No, but I think it needs to be realistic on how we blend that in. I would like to see, again, more green spaces like you. I would like to see that center walkway develop to such a point that we could make it some sort of haven to come visit. I wouldn't mind having some sort of little foot traffic mall through there for small business vendors, you know, like crafters and stuff. Just something to do, something to get another revenue into our community.
Great, all right. Thank you very much, Paul Watson. Jody Smith, you get the last word on this one regarding the Village Partnership Initiative and downtown revitalization.
Well, when the gentleman up from Region 5, when he came to us and the council voted to become part of the Village Partnership Initiative, I don't believe there was any proposals at the time. I believe that we were going into a partnership with some other communities, and when that DOT funding potentially come available, they would do projects in a group area through the different communities. As far as the downtown, as Paul had mentioned, he mentioned the green area. I guess that's a good idea. I haven't really thought about any of those things, or have any of them been presented to us in a formal fashion. And I think this will go back to the DOT coming to us and say we have funding available, or and then we'll start that process, if I'm correct, of moving forward with a design plan or whatever we decide is prudent.
All right, thank you very much, Jody Smith. Anyone else want to say anything additionally on this topic? All right. Question number 5 then will begin with you, Paul Watson, and it's: what priority do you place on, or vision do you have for, riverfront development for a community gathering place and economic development?
Well, a little sarcastically, what development? Show me something. We've had this committee. I'm not saying they're not working hard. I'm not saying they're not putting forth an effort, but there is really nothing to show for it. I'm a show me type person, and a lot of people in our community are. There's been a lot of work there. Why not have some sort of small festival, some sort of small get-together, bring in a couple food trucks, no one has to get crazy about a license, throw down some sand, grab a couple picnic tables, and say, look, this is where we're working. This is what we're doing. These are the things that we can do. This is what we've accomplished. I don't even care if you go out and put sticks in the dirt with little ribbons on them. Show me where we can go. Show me how we can go. Because that way, everybody, see, that's part of a larger problem. The city council, city management, and the city as a whole is not very transparent when it comes to obvious things. They assume that everybody knows. It's like having a meeting, to talk about something with the community at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, if everybody's working, who's showing up? You can't do it that way. You have to go ahead and you have to set it up so the most people can see your project. That's how you get building. That's how you get support. That's how you get things done. So let's have a little something down there. Let's all show up. Tell me what you're doing. Let me walk around, kick a few rocks. And then that way, I bet you we could get much more support for that. Not to mention the fact that everybody would say, we've got it. We're covered.
Great. We'll have to end that question there, and we can come back later if you want to say more on it. But I'm going to move now on to Jody Smith and your thoughts for riverfront development as economic development.
As Paul mentioned, there was a couple of years ago now, the council formed the CRC committee, Caribou Redevelopment Riverfront Committee, I believe, something like that. Surprisingly, we had a fair amount of support. They have voting members, ex officios. There's a council liaison. They have some bylaws now and whatnot. They are working on a master plan, last I knew, for a development in that area. The steam plant's going to come down at some point, and that'll free up that area. What we do down there, I'm not sure. Developmental area. Mr. Haney down the road took a piece of riverfront property and turned it into an RV park that was basically deemed useless property, I guess. So I don't know what we could do there. I believe that tomorrow that committee is going to present some information to the planning board on what they have for their thoughts. So I was surprised at the support that this committee got and what they've gotten to this point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Ben Tucker, the last word on this, at least in this round, is for you.
I'd like to say my sentiments almost one for one echo Paul's. There isn't a lot of development to show for it, and personally, I would love to see a more developed riverfront. But practically, one thing I'm wondering on the subject of being prudent with our taxpayers' dollars is there a demand for this? Or is it going to end up being a project that we sink money into that doesn't get utilized, that ends up raising taxes in the long run that not enough people are using? In that regard, of riverfront development. I would like to see more partnerships with the private sector, encourage landowners to open up businesses there. Let the private sector decide if it's worth the money. If there's a need for it, people will use it, people will open it. If there's not, then possibly it doesn't need to be developed if it's not going to be used.
Right. Anything else that any of you would like to add on this topic?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I agree with you. Okay, is it prudent and are we spending money? I think that's awesome. And that's a good way to look at it. And I think we should be giving the private sector more involved. But again, even if we don't develop it, we own it. So why not just open it up? I mean, why not have, I cannot think of any other community as a unique attraction that literally has any riverfront where we, other than Washburn, where you could let people go down, wander, relax, enjoy a piece of nature. I mean, even at that point, we're coming out ahead.
Anything else for you, Mr. Smith or Mr. Tucker?
Yeah, I would hope that if it is developed at all, would not be on the city's dime, that I would hope that the vision of the committee, which I can't speak for, would be to attract private businesses to develop that, and not on the city's dollar. So that's all I have.
Anything else from you, Mr. Tucker, on this? All right, thank you so much. We're going to continue in the economic development vein in this regard with something that is really the topic of a lot of folks in many communities and certainly statewide and nationally, and that's related to housing. And the question specifically, which we will begin with you, Jody Smith, on is in what ways can the City of Caribou boost new housing starts and encourage maintenance in our aging housing stocks in relation to general blighted conditions? So Jody Smith, your 90 seconds begins.
I guess I have to start off saying, to talk about aging house stocks. I have one, so I'm very familiar with that. I call it the new part, and it was built in '66. Mm-hmm. So the original part was built around 1900. So one of the things we have done in the past, this is a while ago, is for the housing starts. So we've had the building permits have been changed back to a $50 fee instead of, and that's been a while now, to encourage people instead of so much what they spend per $1,000, because you could get a big fee there. Blighted conditions, the demo permits are now free of charge. Encourage people to do that. Obviously, with the, we've got to keep the taxes lower. I mean, to boost new housing starts, and we need the areas for people to purchase a lots other than just agricultural land. I mean, we're limited in the area of and what we could do for the housing starts. It could be something as simple as when we talk about ordinances, we could change some setbacks and that sort of thing. So it just goes back to regulation, I guess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Ben Tucker, your thoughts on housing starts and housing stock?
One good place to start, I think, would be offering tax incentives to available developers, and on the topic of ordinances, remove ordinances. Every ordinance that could be a roadblock to development that's in our power to remove, that we're not beholden to because of the state, get rid of them. Like you had mentioned, housing is a need throughout the state. It's not unique to Caribou. But if we have willing and able contractors, architects, and so on that are willing to purchase a parcel of land from any derelict property owners, then remove the limitations on that. Let them buy it, let them build it. We need to be as accommodating to them as we possibly can. And including if zoning is an issue, if zoning is applicable and we can look into rezoning that parcel of land and be flexible with that, we should do it to get more housing, to lower the cost, and again, to encourage people to stay in Caribou.
Great, thank you, Ben Tucker. Paul Watson, you get the last word on this, at least in the first round, about boosting new housing starts and looking at the aging housing stock, specifically around general blighted conditions.
Well, let's take the aging housing stock. I mean, in my mind, you got to kind of give them a break. The average couple or family in Caribou has gotten considerably older. A lot of them have a hard time taking care of their property. They won't stay. They're good taxpayers. But the place becomes to get run down. You know, you really don't want to see too many 80-year-old men trying to hang off the top of a 40-foot ladder. I mean, it's not really something you want to see. I mean, true, but no, you really don't want to see it. But one of the things that we could be doing is we could be offering them tax incentives to help them rebuild or take care of their home. Now, I'm going to ask a question, and I know it's going against my time, but do we have a book still? Like, you guys used to have the Pathfinder book. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Yes.
Is that still available?
Yes, it's actually being reproduced right now.
Okay. There's a book that when I worked for Alpha One, it created a conjunction between a lot of different agencies, and a lot of us carried it in the back pocket. And it was a way for us to quickly flip through. Oh, your house is busted, you need windows, this is where you call. This is where you get money for that. If this broke, then you go here. If you had a plumbing problem, this is where you go there. If you needed social services, heating assistance, all this was in this book. And because of the rules, you can't advertise that you have it. But if you start reaching out to agencies, and I think that's what we should do. I think we should have a center or a place where you can come together and people are, oh, you got this problem? Let's help you take care of that. Let's do this. As far as new housing starts, that's something I'll take on in another question that's coming up a little later.
Perfect. We'll come back to that then. All right. Jody Smith, you answered that one first. Anything that you want to say additionally on that?
No, I get something. I'll bring it up later.
Okay. Ben Tucker? Paul Watson, anything else you? Yeah.
Sorry, I just thought of something. When new housing starts, I have nothing against solar farms. I think they're a wonderful thing. I think they're great investments. I think they're the wave of the future. But I see them taking parts of land that probably should be developed into housing for us. It'd be nice if we could reach some balance with those folks.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to our seventh question. We're going to begin with you on this one, Ben Tucker, and we're transitioning to the topic of health and wellness and how that can be promoted in our city. First, how do you think that can be promoted? And as an example, better bike and pedestrian facilities and winter wellness opportunities, and your thoughts on those.
I think this is where I think the strong volunteer base is important. There are some really great organizations that can and do already support winter health and wellness. While I don't personally believe it's the role of government to promote health and wellness, something that we could do as city councilors is foster relationships between these organizations and the community. We can offer information about them on the city website or in the city chambers, pamphlets, whichever they want to live with us or leave with us. But beyond that, we do have a rec center that is already, I'd say, underutilized. You drive past it, and unless there's a game going on or something, you don't really see many people out there. We already have resources in place, and I don't think that is something that we should be pursuing beyond working with private organizations that are already doing that same thing.
All right. Paul Watson, your thoughts on promoting health and wellness in the city and things like better bike and pedestrian facilities and winter wellness opportunities?
Well, I'll go along with what you're saying. I don't think government should be playing a big hand in that. However, having said that, I think there is a way that we can contribute and help. You know, we do a lot of winter tourism here. Snowmobilers come from all over the United States. Summertime, we're trying to promote ATVs, ATV clubs, you know, and get out there and stuff. But we're not hooking that tourism yet, which could be a boon in both places for the private sector as well as health and wellness, if we were to sponsor like some sort of walk, like some sort of walking poker run. You know, if you can walk to these places in X amount of time, or you don't even have to do it on the same day, and you bring it in, you get a little coupon for something, you know, so like a cup of coffee, or, you know, maybe a discount coupon for like a store, you know, something we could get private sector to back into. That way you get people more out. At first you have to offer the incentives, and then as more and more participation, the trails grow, things become better put together, we could start to pull back and let it run itself. And then that way we wouldn't have a problem. After all, I agree with you totally. We shouldn't be funding things that the private sector can do much better than we do.
All right, thank you very much, Paul Watson. The last on this one is going to be to you, Jody Smith, about wellness, health and wellness opportunities, how they can be promoted in the community.
I think it's being promoted as we have a rec center, as you mentioned. We have a lot of leisure activities. We have a library that could be educational as well, could be leisure. We put a splash pad in a couple of years ago to replace the upcoming pool. Council was able to do that without a huge amount of. We were able to use some reserve funds. That's well utilized. This playground's there. We have the snow bowl, which has kind of been taken over by some private individuals. It still takes a lot of city staff and time as well, but that's an example of somebody taking care of Winter Carnival. We have obviously the winter. We have the sledding. We have ski trails. So I really think that. And as far as promoting the wellness, I mean that would be something. Carey Medical is doing a lot of that too. The health and wellness things. So I think it's being promoted. Fine.
Thank you, Jody Smith. Just one last check of the room to make sure we're done with this question then. All right, we're going to move on to question 8, a little bit more complex. There has been an ongoing discussion about the drug problem in Caribou and its impact on area youth. What ideas do you have about how to combat the abuse of illegal substances in our community? And Paul Watson, the first 90 seconds on this question goes to you.
As a nurse, this is a complex issue. I mean, it's literally like a stack of crushed crackers. It's just there. And you're going to have to work your way through the bottom of it. There's a lot of parts of this. The biggest part is going to have to be communication. We understand that a large part of this is due to the homeless people that are here. And we'll get to that on a later question. We have to be real. There's not enough support groups, nonprofit, that are trying, and they can only go so far because we don't have the mental health component to go with it. So the treatment that would be available in most cases to help, I don't want to say resolve it, but put us on a better path of success are not available to us. And we're going to have to fall on the good neighbor policy, trying to take care of those folks as much as we can. That's all we can do. I don't say we give up, but I say we constantly look for a solution, but we understand that we're responsible as each individual at going forward until we get those resources made available to us. A good example is I think all the peer groups that are out there that do support. ACAP does a wonderful job in their ability to move certain things, Wings of Hope. I mean, there's all sorts of organizations out there. Communication is key.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul Watson. Jody Smith, your 90 seconds on the challenges with illegal substances in our community.
I think in the last few years, when the City Council does their priorities, opioids is always at the top of the list among everybody. I think it's been a problem all along. It's just becoming more prevalent in the community, maybe, and I'm sure it's getting worse. I'm sure we've all had an instance, everyone in this room, with somebody, whether they went to rehab or you lose a friend or jail time or even death. So I've had that with me, and it's awful. The courts are not necessarily helping all the time. I mean, it's frustration for the police. They arrest somebody, they go in and they get a $200 fine and they're back out or whatever. And in some of the, nationwide, I guess, they're decriminalizing some of these drugs to a level. So, that's not an incentive. That's nothing we can do. And these drugs are getting stronger. Like bathtub gin, they're making stuff up. There's fentanyl, horse tranquilizers. I mean, this is crazy stuff that are killing. And Narcan is now in everybody's vocabulary. Didn't know what that was 6-8 years ago myself. So I guess with the, this almost starts at home. I mean, we have some peer programs, the DARE program. I think those are still in effect. I mean, so a lot of this, starts at the bottom level, and then we have to deal with it. So, very big issue.
Thank you very much, Jody Smith. And the last word on this one, Ben Tucker, is yours in terms of the illegal substance challenges of the community.
I'd like to say again, I think I mostly agree with Paul on this. This is a very multifaceted issue. There are laws already on the books to that are supposed to prevent this type of thing, but it's been proven in city after city that, you know, stricter penalties for drugs don't do anything to reduce drug use. It is a insidious problem once it gets into a city, and we need to address the two major roots for drug use, because people usually turn to drugs to solve a problem that they're lacking in their life, and often it's lack of opportunity or mental health issues. In our earlier questions regarding housing and economic opportunity, we've discussed how we can address the lack of opportunity, which I believe would go a long way towards solving the drug problem, but also expanding access for mental health facilities. On the topic of deregulation, if we can look at our ordinances and do anything to make it easier for these organizations that offer mental health help, that offer recovery units to operate within the city, that could also go a long way towards combating the drug problem among our youths.
Great. Thank you very much. Ben Tucker, anything else on this question before we move on to the next one? Yes, Paul Watson.
The only sales pitch I'll put out there, right, I agree with you. The only sales pitch, and of course, Jody, it needs to start in the home, but we need to communicate it. We need to stop putting it in the back and pretending it doesn't exist. We need to drag it out front, make it as ugly as possible, and make everybody look at it. From a nursing perspective, the nearest mental health facility that takes these type of folks is Bangor. We have nothing here, and we have no ability to care for them other than to stack and rack them in the hospital until they can get an open bed in Bangor. And that waiting list is between 175 and 275 people long on any given day. So it's going to have to be a homegrown solution. We're going to have to do it ourselves.
Ben Tucker, Jody Smith, anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
All right. Next question is perhaps the one that you, as a counselor, will get the most questions related, and that's around the tax burden. As you know, Caribou residents are concerned about the increasing tax burden and have asked when they can expect a decrease in the mill rate. How would you address the need to provide the services that citizens want and need, state-mandated spending, and the desire to keep the tax rate low? And we're going to begin with you, Jody Smith.
Yeah, let's start. I was waiting for this question. There's three parts, obviously, to the mill rate. There's the RSU, the county, and the city. Let's talk about the city side. In 2020, the council successfully was able to reduce the rate by 1 mil, split council. Some of the concerns that, without eliminating services or letting anyone off, some of the concern on the other side at the time was, well, we're kicking the can down the road by doing this. I don't think we're in any better. We're not in any worse shape now. We just have 1 more mill. If we hadn't increased it at the time, or decreased it at the time, we were able to keep that mill very close. Last year, we reduced the mill 18.5. Taxes went up because of the evaluation. It's this year, so we can say, oh, the mill rate went down. I guess the way to approach this would be, you know, we're going to, instead of looking at the mill rate, because there's 3 factors in that, is to look at the budget of the year and say, what was the budget last year? It was $10.5 million approximately. That should be the goal for next year, is to start with that. And that would at least stabilize the mill rate, and the rest would fall in place. So, and the state mandated spending, we have to shoot low on that because revenue sharing moves up and down.
Thank you very much, Jody Smith. Ben Tucker, your 90 seconds on the tax burden.
I think that what we really need to look at is, rather than keeping a stagnant budget, we need to look at and take some serious consideration in what we can do to decrease the budget. I understand that there are services that we need in Caribou, and then there are services that we want. My concern is that as the burden increases, and talking to people throughout the town, you hear all the time, my neighbors had to move because their rent went up because of the mill rate increase. We couldn't afford our house on a fixed income because of the mill house increase. The tax base is leaving. So 5-10 years from now, if that trend continues, what does that look like? there's less people to pay it out because it keeps on going up to accommodate for the people leaving. It's a cycle. It's kicking down the can down the road, like Jody said. And then we can't fund those services that the city wants anyways because there's not enough people paying taxes in the town. We need to take a really long, critical look at the budget, at the spending of each individual department. What can be done for cheaper? What can we afford to forego temporarily so that we can offer tax cuts to businesses to build up the town, to increase the tax base in the long run, so that we can afford to keep on paying these services permanently.
All right, we'll end at that one there, and we'll go on to you, Paul Watson, on your 90 seconds on this question related to the tax burden.
I think your biggest problem is perception. Okay? To be honest with you, we've talked about the mill rate, we talked about how the budget goes, but to the average person on the street, I'll tell you exactly what it looks like. Because I was confronted with this, and this is the best explanation I could come up with at the time. It's like someone went out and cooked a 16-inch pizza and cut it into 12 slices, brought it to you and said, there's nothing you can do, you have to eat all 12 slices. And then you say, well, there's no way, I can't eat 12 slices. I said, no problem, we're going to help you. Then went back to the kitchen, made another 16-inch pizza and cut it in 8 slices and brought it back out to you and said, here, eat this. And you said, I still can't do this. And the answer is, well, 8's less than 12. You know? Yeah, the mill rate looks lower, but again, Jody was correct. We raised the land assessment values. So where do we go? You know, if you're going to do this, I think one of the things that we can do, and I got to speak really fast, so I'm going to sound like an auctioneer, I'm sorry. You're going to have to look at pay-to-go services. We spend a lot of money with people, like in the spring, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick up all this stuff, all this debris, the winter, even after a big storm, okay? I'm rural. I don't need it. Why should that affect my taxes? I'll just collect the trees, drag them in the back, and have a bonfire, invite the neighbors over and have a party. I understand that we can't do that in town. So why don't we do this? It's a little way to make money on the side and cut costs at the same time. You go ahead, you come down to the town office, you write your name down, your address, and your permit. You pay $20. Seniors get 10.
All right. I'm going to just hold you there.
I'm gonna come back and finish
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. Just going to check with the other two candidates if you have anything else to add first in the order that we answered. Jody Smith?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the past year I voted against the mill rate increase. We could have done a little better on the city side. I'm not saying the mill was there was some money in a tax relief fund that we could have used. Fortunately, it's still there. It's not going anywhere, but I thought one of my reasonings against that, it was 194,000. That would have peeled back about 2/3 of a mill. So to point that out from this past year's budget, or this current year's budget.
Ben Tucker, anything else from you on this topic?
No.
All right, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, I'll make this very quick. So anyway, you have them come down. If you're a senior, you pay $10. If you're an average person, you pay 20. Okay? Just that simple. We've done 3 things. We've created a small revenue stream that we get to put in our pocket as a community, and we're not wasting the time of the people that work for us by running all over town looking to see who's got what out there. They can look at it, they have names, they have addresses, they can plan a route, most efficient, most fuel saving, go out, get the job, and come back. Oh, and by the way, if we swing out to your house and you decide to clean out the last 40 acres and bring it out front and drop it in your front yard, then we can charge you extra and make our money back on it. That's just one example of how we can do little things to make money on the side to help defray costs.
Great. All right, thank you, candidates. We're going to move on to a question sort of like an earlier question related to housing, but this is around housing insecurity, and it asks, the consequences of housing insecurity and homelessness is something that Caribou is experiencing along with other Aroostook County communities, but what solutions should the City of Caribou consider for assisting those in crisis? And Ben Tucker, we're going to begin with your 90 seconds on this one.
Homelessness as a whole isn't a problem that I believe can be solved by the government. I think it's a problem that's much larger. You can't pass policy and expect it to go away. A lot of cities have tried, and a lot of cities have lost millions on similar policy to try and combat homelessness with no measurable results to show for it. Similar to the question about drug use, I think that this is where we really want to foster environment for houses to be built, for opportunity, so that people can afford to live, so that people have houses over their head, as well as more access to mental health facilities for when that's the underlying cause of homelessness. I think that access to mental health care and allowing those services to operate more easily will similarly help combat the homeless problem as well as the drug problem.
Great, thank you very much, Ben Tucker. Paul Watson, your thoughts on housing insecurity and homelessness and how the city looks to consider assisting in these crises?
Well, to be honest with you, just 4 questions pop up into my head. How many homeless? We don't even have a number. We have no clue who they are, how they became homeless, what's going on. I deal with this a lot on the veteran side, okay? And we tell veterans, because we can't verify them, we tell them to make it to the nearest homeless shelter, throw their hands in the air and say they're a veteran. Once they get put into the system, their name kicks. Then I can come in and I can do the veteran assistance programs to take care of them and move them along and get them out of the shelter and get them reestablished. I'd like to take that and move that over to like a civilian concept for us here in the community. I don't know who would do it, and it's something we'd have to think about. But if you could go into some place and they had all these services available, and all you need to do is just bring in, drop your name on, and then we can start working with you. We have programs, and we have homeless people. Why can't we bring the two together? I think the bus ride up here, though, is getting kind of crazy. In talking with law enforcement folks downstairs, their answer is being told, here's a ticket, get on the bus, go up to Northern Maine, there's all those services, and there's not enough people for them. They have no clue that it's based on your population, what's available.
Thank you, Paul Watson. Jody Smith, your thoughts about housing insecurity and homelessness and how Caribou grapples with that?
I guess the only thing I can see is, and I agree with Paul, is, what is the the number of homelessness. I mean, all I can see that we can do now is if we can get in touch or find these people or get a name, we can get them into general assistance, get them to the top of a list or Section 8. I know there's a list there, but it's always it's a beginning, and that's general assistance, and then they get you on the list. They get you over to the housing authority, and we're talking about housing insecurity. I mean, there's a lack of housing, there's a lack of rents. I mean, even for the housing authority, and we have a unique housing authority. I guess we can go on the insecurity because we have tenants that we pay, or the federal government pays, whereas other communities actually own and maintain those properties, which I like the way we do it. But and there's also a housing insecurity. There's a lack of housing for people that aren't homeless, single family people. Go find an apartment in Caribou. It's reasonable. It's very tough. So I guess back to the homeless thing is that's the general assistance and housing authority is all I can see that the city can do right now.
Thank you, Jody Smith. Any other thoughts on this? We'll begin with you, Ben Tucker. Anything else you want to add to this?
No, sir.
Right, Paul Watson and Jody Smith.
No, thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next question, question number 11, and it asks, in June 2022, Caribou voters approved the construction of a new police station not to exceed $10 million. What are your thoughts about the efforts to raise money to defray the overall cost to Caribou taxpayers, including the $2.5 million congressionally directed spending dollars request that has already been received? And we're going to begin, sorry about that, we're going to begin with you, Paul Watson.
Well, to be honest with you, that $10 million is not even going to cover any part of that construction. Just a simple economy and inflation where it is, we're looking at numbers that's much larger. And unfortunately, it sounds like we're probably going to have to back up and figure out how to do this. I can spend the next 30 minutes saying how this can should have never been kicked this far down the road. When it first came up, it should have been handled. I think depending on where it is, because we're still talking about locating it at the Bird's Eye area. Is that firm now? We're going to go there. That's a huge parcel of land. We could probably part some of that out to defray the cost to private business. I I mean, who wouldn't want to have a business next to a police station? I feel secure, you know. Other than that, guys, I think we're going to be on the side of the road picking up beer cans because it's just going to cost too much. That's all I got.
All right, Paul Watson. Thank you, Jody Smith. Your thoughts on the new police station?
Yeah, we agreed that this is it's gone too far, and I'm on the council. There's been multiple factors in here that have pushed us down. Mainly the architect, but I don't want to get into that whole person. Up to the 10 million, we've received the $2.5 million from the congressional district spending. Well, that's probably all we're going to get. Hopefully, we could get more, but I'm sure that was our allotment from through our senators. So that leaves us $7.5 million. There was a nonprofit set up because I believe there is grants. A nonprofit was set up because there's grants for specifics, not just the $2.5 million. You can get a grant for $100 grand for HVAC, or you can get for green energy. So that's working, but I mean it's not going to offset the $7.5 million. I mean if we're going to continue with this, it's up to 10 million. I mean we're going to have to really be creative on how we finance this, so it doesn't. I mean there's ways to do this and not have a massive impact and blow our budget right out of the. And obviously the price has gone up, and we just need to. This is a priority. One of my priorities is to get this behind us. So.
Thank you, Jody Smith. Ben Tucker.
Yeah, I think that the situation surrounding the police station as it is right now looks pretty grim. I think that the $10 million price tag for a new police station, although we needed one, that cost I think is aggressively irresponsible for what we're talking about here. And on the topic of thinking we're going to go over $10 million, as of 8/26, unless I misread the estimate that's available on the city website, the current estimate is $13 million for this. So we're already beyond that. And so I think that greater transparency surrounding this topic specifically to the general public is a must. Everyone's outraged about it. When you go talk to them, they're not sure where the money's coming from. The efforts to raise the money to defray the cost of this project have been largely invisible to the general public. They need to see what's going on, and we need to figure out what we're doing with this, because when I read not to exceed $10 million, that tells me one of two things: that we're going to hit $10 million and then construction's going to stop and they're going to say, okay, here it is, make it work, or the excess is going to be picked up by the taxpayer. And I don't think either option is acceptable.
Thank you, Ben Tucker. Any last word on this by any of you?
Yes.
Okay, Paul Watson.
I agree with you, but I think the sad part is we're going to pick up the 10 million in taxes also. That was part of the original deal. But again, I think one of the safer things to start looking at is what assets does the town have? Let's trade some of those off. I'm not saying we get rid of everything, but why not trade some stuff off? Why not give it to private investors? Why not build something? Why not create an economic growth pattern with that property we toss off to create, if we were lucky, could at least finance probably 50-60%. That'd be a lot easier to swallow.
Anything else for you two gentlemen? Nope. Okay. Question 12 will begin with you, Jody Smith, and it's about the thoughts on the recent rise in anti-government extremist activities in Maine. How should the Caribou City Council react if someone disrupts a city council meeting by claiming that they can ignore laws, regulations, and taxes?
I mean, there's going to be, there's always going to be people not happy with city government. It doesn't matter, even if everything's going great. So, I don't know how much anti-government extremist activities we had in Caribou and Maine. I haven't been following it. But I just want to share a moment when this was brought up when I was in this chair and I came to a meeting to get prepared, and somebody had apparently had made some threats about they were going to get verbal at the meeting, and there was some concern. So we put an officer at the door and another officer, and I said, what do we do? And he said, if it gets out of control, you shut the meeting down and we take over. So with that instance, whoever's running the meeting, I would think, or the council that would be a simple fix. If somebody gets really crazy out of line, I mean, you get people that are disgruntled, at the public forum, but nobody's they're speaking their mind peacefully, you know. So I guess that little story is just makes it that simple. As far as that's all I have to say.
All right, Ben Tucker, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. If it's their time to speak and they're disgruntled and they're up there saying that, you know, they're going to ignore laws, ignore regulations, ignore taxes, that's their right. That's their First Amendment right. It's granted to us naturally, protected by the government. If it gets to a point where the council is seeing a rise of anti-government extremist behavior, then I would say maybe it's time for some deliberation and introspection and think, what are we doing to foster those sentiments in our town? But at the end of the day, if they're being disruptive, there's already policies in place to handle that. If they actually ignore laws, regulations, and taxes, there's already regulations in place to handle that. Beyond that, we thank them for their time and, you know, try to remember that our government was founded by anti-government extremists. I don't have anything against people expressing their First Amendment.
All right, thank you, Ben Tucker. Paul Watson, your thoughts on seeing the rise in anti-government activities?
Well, to be honest, I agree with you. And I think Jody's plan for actual open hostility is good also. I think the part that we're missing, though, is the fact that most of these people are disgruntled. They've already encountered something in the process over and over again that's led them to that frustration. I think that's where we probably fell down, and that's where it needs to be fixed at the lowest level. The other thing I find is that, and I've worked with a lot of upset, frustrated, and violent vets, and a lot of times what they want is they want the respect for what they're trying to say. They want the understanding that you're actually listening to them, and that in a realistic way, you may not even be able to, they know that you may not be able to do anything for them, but at least giving them the opportunity to speak and trying to convince them to do that with a non-emotional charge behind their voice and help diffuse the situation tends to work a lot better than, you know, just say, oh, I'm not going to put up with it, I'm not going to listen to you. You know, I don't think that's an option anymore. And you're right, if this becomes a trend, then I think the first thing we need to do is lock the door and talk about maybe we need to start having other elections. You know, because obviously there's a trend and there's some people that probably need to be replaced.
All right, thank you very much, Paul Watson. Anyone else want to chime in on this? All right, so we're going to move on now to our 13th question, and that is going to you first, Ben Tucker, and it's, as a Caribou City Councilor, what would be your top 3 goals for the next 10 years that should be incorporated into the 2024 to 2034 comprehensive plan?
My top 3 goals would be, 1, I would like to work to remove any barriers of entry that we can to new businesses and new housing being developed in the city. I think economic development is critical. I think all other goals would be moot without it. It is extremely important at this point in time. And I would like to really take a hard look at our ordinances and see what we can do to help those folks along. The second one, piggybacking off of that, is I would like to see more economic opportunities for skilled works in the trades. Anyone who's had a problem that they can't fix themselves, I'm sure, is used to the multi-month, sometime year-long wait. Our tradesmen are retiring. There's not a lot of people coming in to replace them. I think something along the lines of grants for business owners in the trades to take on apprentices, similar to a tax break, so that they can offer a signing bonus similar to what some of the hospitals do for nurses, would go a long way. And lastly, I want to support our existing businesses and entrepreneurs in the form of tax breaks and not just give it to the new businesses coming in. I think that they deserve every opportunity that new businesses would get so that they can expand, they can grow their workforce, and they can bring their wages up for the community.
Thank you very much, Ben Tucker. We're going to move on to you, Paul Watson, and your top 3 goals for the next 10 years that should be incorporated into the comprehensive plan.
I think economic development and stabilization is the first one. I think we need to increase our housing, both rental and residential properties, so that we create a stable community. And that third one is to put ourselves on the map as a unique location. Those three things combined together and interwoven will provide a strong basis moving forward for just about anything. Having said that, that's lovely, and that's 10 years down the road. I think the focus right now needs to be what we're doing tomorrow to make sure that we have the 10 years.
Thank you, Paul Watson. Jody Smith, your thoughts and top 3 goals for the next 10 years to be incorporated into the comprehensive plan?
These two kind of go together. It'd be economic development and blight removal. At the time, a few years ago, some of the councilors, some of the people and citizens put together, spent a lot of time on doing some research on blight removal. I think that should be put in with a comprehensive plan that directly goes to economic development. The Bird's Eye, we got 26 acres there, approximately 27, even if you take out the acre for the police station potentially. There's a lot of development there, and also finish the public safety building, which was in the last 10-year comprehensive plan. So those last two, and that economic development and the blight removal and housing, that all kind of, I feel, falls all kind of together.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Our 14th question, we'll begin with you, Paul Watson, on this. We've discussed a lot of these this evening, but what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the city of Caribou, and what would be your plan to address it?
Well, this is going to sting. Basically, we've been dancing around this all night long. The biggest problem is the city council, town management, and overdue regulation. I'm not saying it's the people who are sitting currently in the chairs. This has been going on for a very long time. We got it into a direction, we got into a path, and here we are. Okay. I think one of the things I'd like to see, I would like to see more transparency. I think that's the biggest saving grace to both the town manager, who, pardon my language, busts their butt every day, and the city council trying to do things. I don't think the perception of transparency is there to help them. They need to be much more transparent. The other thing I think I'd like to see is I'd like to see term limits for city council members. There's some folks that I've talked to, and the community is famous for it. There's been people on the town council for 10, 12, 14, 16 years. I think you need to constantly look for new blood. New blood gives you new ideas, it allows you to move forward. The other thing is that I think we just need to have realistic finances. I don't think you can write checks if there's no money in the bank. The last time I checked, only the federal government is printing more money. We don't have that option available to us. And it's kind of a sad way to look at it. And again, going to regulations, like I said before, if you need a second lawyer to read what the first lawyer wrote to keep your butt out of trouble, then I think we need to rewrite the regulations so that the average person walking into the room can pick up the book or go online and say, yep, there we go.
All right, thank you. We'll leave that one at that, and we are going to move on to you, Jody Smith, now to hear what your biggest challenge is facing the city of Caribou and what your plan would be to address it.
Probably just one big thing here, I guess, is, and it goes back to that mill rate question, is keeping that budget at least in line. I'm trying to, we've already got some things have already been dictated. There were some wage increases this year that were given for retention and then fill the departments up. So we already have that challenge down the road, because that's an immovable expense that we've added. But I think there's other ways that we can keep this in line and keep that mill rate stable.
And Ben Tucker, your thoughts on the biggest challenge facing the city of Caribou and your plan to address it?
I think the biggest challenge to Caribou right now is the working population. Help wanted signs are posted all over the city, but in addition to those, a lot of those are at retail locations or restaurants, and we do need more than just restaurant and retail workers. We need tradesmen. We need something like a tech industry, just other kinds of higher paying jobs to keep things competitive, to keep wages competitive, so that people can afford to live and settle down in Caribou. I think without that working population, without people buying houses, without people paying into property taxes, that mill rate is just going to be forced to go up to even maintain the budget that we have. Otherwise, it's going to just stagnate, and it's going to decrease gradually in the services that can be provided. What we have right now isn't sustainable without that working population.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker. We're going to change the tenor a bit. We've talked a lot about challenges this evening, but we're going to talk about what the city of Caribou is doing well. So what do you regard as something that the city of Caribou is doing well, and what is your plan to ensure that continues? And we're going to begin at the top of the table here with you, Jody Smith.
Well, I think Caribou's doing a lot of good things. Despite some of the problems and differences we have, we're promoting local events. We've got excellent things going on. Sweden's on Thursdays. With snow bowls, dust bowls. We've got crafts fairs. I think our departments, we have excellent city employees and staff. We're doing a good job maintaining our city and keeping our assets up, which is our municipal buildings and our equipment. We're doing a good job with that. That's been sustained mostly through our capital improvement budget, which has been watched very closely. Caribou doesn't have a huge amount of long-term debt, so that's a bonus, I think, as far as something we've been doing. So we've been watching. Other than some upcoming things, so there's a lot of good happening out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody Smith. Ben Tucker, your thoughts on what the city of Caribou is doing well and how you would help sustain that?
I think that what Caribou does exceptionally well is community engagement. Like you had mentioned in my introduction, I've lived a lot of places in a lot of different cities. I don't think any place I've been has Caribou beaten, I don't think any other place has Caribou beaten in that regards. I think that Thursdays on Sweden Street, Caribou Cares About Kids is great. We recently hosted the county's Oktoberfest, which was fantastic. That was a really good time. I would like to just continue the support of these events and take it a step further. And I'm not saying we have to throw money at the private sector events, but promote them. Promote them on the website. We have things to do in Caribou. We can dedicate a spot there for them so that it makes us more of a destination as well for people traveling from away. But also it drives more attention to people that might not know what some of these events are or where they're going on.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben Tucker. Paul Watson, the last thought on what the city of Caribou is doing well and what you would do to help ensure that continues belongs to you. 90 seconds.
Well, I'll piggyback on what these two gentlemen say, to be quite honest with you. And I'll use an example. I think the private sector is a solution. And not a shout out to him, but a thank you. I think Troy Haney has done immensely for this community. I think his ability to throw together and see what's going to work and repetitively come back and beat the bushes and try to make it go, I think he's done a phenomenal job in bringing people from way outside the community into this community and show them something that is viable and is doable, as well as the fact that a lot of people enjoy the experience. And I think the fact that he's doing it year round allows these people, not necessarily the same ones, but to come back during some of the high points of our seasons here. You can't beat a fall season here. You can't beat Christmas, when it snows around here. You can't beat the summertime. And you enjoy immensely that little time between mud season and mosquito season. That's a great time. Do you know what I'm saying? Those are things that these people are getting to experience that are not from here. And I think he's done a hell of a job. And I agree. I would like to support more things like that.
All right. Thank you very much, all three candidates, for your responses to our 15 questions that were submitted by Caribou residents, and both for this candidate forum and in previous candidates forums. It's now time for the closing statements for each of you, and as I will remind you, Mr. Smith opened with opening statements first. Mr. Tucker answered the first question. So Mr. Watson will begin with the first of our 90-second prepared closing statements. So it's yours.
Okie doke. You know, city council has been the same for a very long time. You get the same results, same effort, and the same missed goals. I think, and that's why I'm here. Out of that frustration, I see that we're looking at, you want to be a sleeper city where people sleep here, work somewhere else, but we don't have the housing. You want to be a manufacturing center, but we don't do anything for manufacturing. You want to bring in businesses, but we're making it impossibly hard, rule-wise, to bring in businesses. It's time for a change. It's time to go in a new direction. I think the people are here. I think the citizens are here. I think the community's here. I think the private sector's here. It's just a matter of changing direction. And maybe that means changing some of the folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul Watson, we're going to move to you. Jody Smith.
Thank you, everybody, everyone, for being part of this program tonight. And thank you, Jason. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to serve the citizens of Caribou. The clock doesn't reset itself January 1st. There's a lot of previous agenda carrying forward. I have a lot of knowledge of city government, and especially the budget. I would like to bring this knowledge with me for another term. Look forward to keeping Caribou to the high standard we all expect. Please get out and vote November 5th.
Thank you, Jody Smith. And Ben Tucker, the final word in closing statements belongs to you.
I would just like to thank everyone for putting on this event. Penny, Jason, Jody, Paul, everyone watching. And again, another thank you to everybody who has put me up here. I've only been in Caribou since late 2021. I've gotten a lot of support, and I'm really happy to have the chance to possibly represent everyone on the council today. I think there's a lot of opportunity in Caribou. I just don't think that the right steps are being taken to grab it. And I'm really eager to be a part of that solution. So I hope that anyone watching at home, I've earned your vote or your support today. I do have a Facebook page, Ben Tucker for Caribou City Council. If you have any questions at all that you'd like to see answered, or any of my answers that you'd like to see expanded upon, feel free to shoot me a message. I'm a very responsive person, and I'm always happy to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben Tucker, and thank you again to our three candidates, Jody Smith, Ben Tucker, and Paul Watson, first and foremost for stepping up and being willing to serve your fellow citizens here in Caribou by serving on the council. And lastly, to my fellow citizens here in Caribou, the decision on which of these two of the three candidates here before you will hold the seats on the Caribou City Council does in fact rest in your hands. Before I remind you about voting in the upcoming election, I want to thank our City Manager Penny Thompson for coordinating this forum. It's a very important part of our democratic process, and the information that was shared here hopefully has helped you in making your decision on November 5th. As it relates to November 5th, that is the day of the election, and it is happening as it usually does here in Caribou at the Caribou Wellness and Recreation Center at 55 Bennett Drive. The polling place is open that day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you know in advance that that will not be convenient for you, applications for absentee ballots are currently available, and we encourage you to contact City Clerk Danielle Brissette to obtain one of those. At this point, again, my thanks to the candidates, my thanks to the City Manager, and please remember to vote on or before November 5th. I'm Jason Parent. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the citizens who watched at home.